Honey, just use Mama's card. She's got like $130,000 saved up. I heard my son Michael's voice from the living room, and I felt the floor drop out from under me. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch with my hands covered in flour when those words cut through the wall and struck my chest like a clenched fist. I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. My own son, the boy I carried for 9 months, the one I nursed and raised alone after his daddy left us, was handing over my bank card to Chinese, his wife, like it was his own. As if the money that cost me 40 years of work, of ruined knees scrubbing other people's floors, of tired eyes sewing late into the night, belonged to him. I dropped the rolling pin on the counter and stood paralyzed, my heart hammering so loud I could hear it in my ears. "Are you sure, babe? Won't she get mad?" Chinese asked, with that sweet voice she used when she wanted something. It was a voice I knew all too well after 15 years of watching her manipulate my son. "Nah, Mom won't say nothin'. She lives here rent-free. She eats our food, uses our utilities. It's the least she can do to help us out a little. Besides, she's old now. What does she need all that cash saved for? We got expenses. We got a life ahead of us," Michael replied, and every word was like a knife twisting in my back. I stood there, staring at the dough on the table, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. I wasn't going to cry. I had cried enough in this house over the last 20 years. Ever since Michael convinced me to sell my little apartment to help him with the down payment on this place, which he now claimed was only his. Rent-free, he'd said. I lived rent-free in the house I helped buy. I ate for free the food I cooked every single day. I used the utilities I paid for with my $500 monthly Social Security check, which I handed over in full every month without keeping a cent for myself. I heard Chinese's footsteps approaching the door, the rattle of her purse, the jingle of the car keys. She was heading to the mall with my card in hand, with the code Michael had given her, with access to every dollar I had ever sweated for. "I'm heading out to the mall, Mama Loretta. You need anything?" she called out from the living room, with that fake kindness she used in front of Michael, as if we were friends, as if she hadn't taken my son from me piece by piece all these years. "No, sweetie, thank you," I replied, my voice as steady as I could make it, without turning, without letting her see my face. I heard the door close, the car engine start, the sound fading down the street. I sank into a kitchen chair and looked at my hands. 68-year-old hands, wrinkled and spotted, hands that had worked nonstop since I was 14. I remembered every one of those $130,000. Every bill had a story, a sacrifice, a compromise. The first $10,000 I saved working as a seamstress in a shop where I clocked in at 6 a.m. and left at 8 p.m., 6 days a week, saving the little money I made each day in an envelope under my mattress. It took me 3 years to save those first 10,000, eating rice and beans almost every day, never buying myself a new pair of shoes. Another 20,000 came from the extra cleaning jobs I took on Sundays, the one day I was supposed to rest. Huge houses belonging to rich families who paid me $50 for 8 hours of work. I cleaned 3 houses every Sunday, $150. I saved in full without spending a dime. The rest came from years and years of having no life of my own, no new clothes, no trips to the beauty parlor, no eating out, saying no to anything that cost money. While other women my age went out with friends or treated themselves, I counted pennies and tucked them into the bank account I'd opened 30 years ago. And for what? To have a place of my own someday. A small, modest apartment where no one could tell me I was living for free, where I could close my door and be the owner of my space, my peace, my life. That was all I wanted. It wasn't much to ask after 68 years in this world, but now, my son, my own son, had just handed over my card as if it were his, as if I didn't exist, as if my life and my effort meant nothing. Michael walked into the kitchen with his phone in his hand, not even glancing at me. He poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the refrigerator. "Lunch almost ready, Mama? I got a meeting at 3 and need to eat quick," he said, with that tone he'd been using lately, the tone that wasn't a question, but an order. "Almost," I replied, standing up to continue with the dough, though my legs felt shaky. "Oh, hey, Mama. Chinese went to the mall. We needed some things for the house," he said, still not looking up from his phone, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I didn't answer. I kept kneading, pressing the dough harder than necessary, feeling the mix of rage and pain in my chest. "Did you hear what I said?" Michael asked, finally looking up. "Yes," I said, without turning. "And is there a problem?" Irritation was in his voice now, as if I were the one doing something wrong. I turned and looked him in the eyes, those eyes that once looked at me with love, respect, and admiration. Now, I only saw impatience and annoyance. "Should I have a problem?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, though inside, I was a volcano about to erupt. "No, of course not. It's just some things for the house. Besides, Mama, you live here. It's normal for you to help out with the expenses once in a while," he said, going back to his phone, as if the conversation were over. Help out with the expenses? He said that as if I didn't hand over my full Social Security check every month, as if I didn't cook, clean, wash, and iron for the whole family without charging a dollar, as if the last 20 years of my life hadn't been dedicated to serving them. "I see," was all I said, and I returned to my dough. Michael left the kitchen, and I stood there, looking out the window at the small yard that I maintained myself. The roses I planted, the grass I watered every morning, the tomatoes growing in the corner, all in a house my son claimed was only his. In that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to stand by and watch them steal the only thing I had left. I wasn't going to let Chinese spend in one day what took me 40 years to save. And I definitely wasn't going to keep living in a house where they treated me like a maid and not a mother. I finished preparing lunch, wiped my hands on my apron, and went straight to my room. I locked the door, pulled out my old flip phone, and dialed the bank number I had memorized. I waited for the rings, my heart racing. "Unity Trust Bank, good morning. This is Aisha. How can I help you?" A friendly voice answered on the other end. "Good morning. I need to block my debit card immediately," I said firmly. "Can you confirm your full name and account number, please?" the operator asked professionally. I gave her all my details, answered the security questions, and confirmed my date of birth and address. With every passing second, my heart hammered faster, as if I were committing a crime when I was only protecting what was mine. "I understand, Miss Mathis. Was there an issue with the card? Did you lose it or was it stolen?" the operator asked. "Let's just say someone has it without my authorization," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "Perfect. I'll proceed to block the card immediately. From this moment on, no one will be able to make any transactions with it. Would you like us to mail a new card to your home address?" Aisha explained from the bank. "Yes, please, but don't send it to this address. I'll pick it up personally at the branch next week," I said, thinking fast. I didn't want Michael or Chinese to intercept my new card. "No problem, Miss Mathis. Your card was blocked at 11:25 a.m. Is there anything else I can help you with?" the operator asked. "No, that's all. Thank you very much," I said, and hung up the phone with trembling hands. I sat on the edge of my bed, that twin bed Michael had given me when I moved into this house, telling me the room was small and couldn't fit a bigger one. I looked around my 10 by 10 foot room, a bed, a small closet, a nightstand. This was all my space in a 4-bedroom house. Chinese had a full walk-in closet all to herself, bigger than my entire room. Michael had his private office where no one could enter. There was a TV room, a formal dining room only used when guests came over, and I lived in the smallest room, the one that used to be the pantry. But I never complained. I never complained because he was my son, because I loved him, because I thought that someday he would see me again as his mother and not as a burden. How naive I was. I heard Michael's phone ring in the living room, his voice answering, then silence.
Then his voice louder, more agitated. Blocked? How is it blocked? That's impossible. My mama never blocks anything. She doesn't even know how to use those bank things, Michael was saying, and I could hear the frustration in his tone. I stayed still, holding my breath, listening. Chinese, wait, let me call Mama, Michael said, and seconds later he was pounding on my door. Mama, are you in there? I need to talk to you, urgent. Coming, I said, waiting a few seconds before opening the door. I opened it, and there was Michael, phone in hand, with that anxious look he got when things didn't go his way. Mama, Chinese just called me from the mall. She said your card isn't working, that it shows up as blocked. Did you block it? He asked, straight to the point. I looked him in the eye, and for the first time in 20 years, I wasn't afraid to tell the truth. Yes, I blocked it, I replied calmly. What? Why did you do that? Chinese is at the checkout with a cart full of stuff. She's being horribly embarrassed, Michael said, raising his voice. I didn't give her permission to use my card. That money is mine, I said, maintaining my composure. Mama, don't start with that now. Chinese was just going to buy some things we need for the house. It's not a big deal. Call the bank and unblock the card right now, Michael ordered, with that authoritative tone he had developed over the years. No, I said simply. Michael fell silent, staring at me as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. It was probably the first time in 20 years I had told him no. What do you mean, no? Mama, you're not understanding. Chinese is waiting at the mall with $2,000 worth of purchases. Do you have any idea how embarrassed she is right now? Michael said, his face red with anger. 2,000? I repeated slowly, feeling the words burn in my throat. Michael, she was going to spend $2,000 of my money without even asking me? It's stuff for the house, Mama. A new TV, a sofa set, appliances we need to replace. It's not like it's just for her, Michael explained, as if that justified everything. I didn't authorize those expenses. I saved that money working for 40 years. It's not family money. It's my money, I said firmly. Mama, you live in this house. You use the electricity, the water, the gas, the internet. All of that costs money. Or do you think it's free? It's fair that you contribute, I asked, feeling my voice break but holding firm. That $500 doesn't even cover your food expenses, Mama. You're being selfish. You have $130,000 saved that you're not using for anything. What do you need it for? What are you going to do with it at your age? Michael said, and those words hurt more than any physical blow.
At my age? As if at 68 years old I no longer deserve to have dreams, plans, or dignity. That money is for me to buy my own apartment and stop being a burden to you, I said, and I saw Michael's eyes widen in surprise. What are you talking about? Nobody said you're a burden, Michael replied, but his voice didn't sound convincing. You just said it 5 minutes ago in the living room. You told Shanice I was living here for free, eating your food, using your utilities, that I was old and didn't need so much money. That's what you said, I stated, and I watched Michael's face go pale as he realized I had heard everything. A long, awkward silence followed. Michael opened his mouth several times, trying to find words, but nothing came out. Mama, I didn't mean it like that, he finally said, but without looking me in the eyes. But you said it, and you thought it, and right now you're more worried about Shanice's embarrassment at the mall than the fact that she tried to spend $2,000 of mine without my permission, I said, feeling the tears well up, but I kept them in. She's my wife, Mama. It's normal for me to defend her, Michael said. And I'm your mother? Isn't it normal for you to defend me? I asked, and that question hung in the air between us like a ghost. Michael fell silent again. He looked at his phone, then at me, then back at his phone. I could see the conflict on his face, the battle between his conscience and his loyalty to Chinese. Mama, please, just unblock the card for today. Chinese is already there. She already picked everything out. We can't leave her hanging like that. We'll talk about this calmly later, Michael said, in a softer tone now, trying to manipulate me with guilt. No, Michael.
And tell Janice to come home. The three of us need to talk, I said, with a firmness I didn't know I possessed. Mama, don't blow this out of proportion, please, Michael pleaded. I didn't do anything. You are the ones who took my card without permission. You are the ones who were planning to spend my money like it was yours. I'm just protecting what belongs to me, I said, and I took a step back to close my bedroom door. Michael stood in front of my closed door. I heard him knock softly with his knuckles. Mama, open up, please. Don't be mad, he pleaded, using that voice he used when he was a little boy, that voice that used to melt my heart, but now only filled me with anger. I didn't answer. I sat on my bed and waited. I heard his steps retreat. I heard him talking on the phone with Janice in a low voice. I heard him explaining that I had blocked the card. I also heard Janice yelling on the other end of the phone, so loud that her voice cut through the device. Your mother is crazy. I'm standing here like an idiot in front of all these people. The saleswoman already called the manager. This is humiliating, Janice screamed, and I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. Let her feel shame. Let her feel what it's like when someone makes you look bad. I had felt shame for 20 years, every time I was introduced at family gatherings as the mother who lives with us. Every time Janice told her friends that I helped out around the house, as if I were the domestic worker. A half hour passed before I heard Janice's car pull up. The front door slammed so hard it shook the walls. I heard her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. That sound that always announced a storm. Where is your mother? Janice asked, her voice dripping with venom. Janice, calm down. Let's talk about this quietly, Michael said, trying to appease her. Quietly? Your mother made me suffer the biggest embarrassment of my life. There were like 20 people staring while the saleswoman kept trying to run the card over and over. I had to leave everything there and run out. I know, babe, I know, but she heard what we talked about this morning. She's upset, explained. And so what if she heard? We spoke the truth. She lives here without paying anything. The least she can do is help us when we need it. It's not fair that she has $130,000 saved while we kill ourselves working and paying all the bills for this house, Janice said, and every word confirmed what I already knew. To her, I wasn't a person. I was a source of money. I got up from the bed and opened my bedroom door. I walked toward the living room where they were both standing. Janice looked at me with eyes full of fury, still holding her empty mall bags. Loretta, we need to talk seriously, Janice said, without even greeting me, without a hello or a good afternoon. Yes, we need to talk, I replied, calmly, and I sat on the single armchair, which was the only place they ever permitted me to sit. The big sofa was Janice's exclusive territory. Why did you block your card? Why did you put me through that embarrassment? Janice attacked immediately. I didn't put you through any embarrassment. You brought it on yourself by trying to spend $2,000 of my money without my permission, I replied, looking her directly in the eyes. It's not just your money. This is a family. Families share, Janice yelled, taking a step toward me. I am not your family, Janice. I am Michael's mother, and my money is mine. I earned it, I saved it, and I decide what to do with it, I said, keeping my tone calm, though inside, I wanted to scream everything I had bottled up for 15 years. Mama, please don't be like this. Janice just wanted to buy things that we genuinely need for the house. The TV in the living room is 8 years old. The sofa is all worn out. The refrigerator makes weird noises, Michael intervened, trying to justify the unjustifiable. If you need those things, buy them with your money. You both work. Michael makes good money as an engineer. Janice works at that clothing store. You have 2 incomes. Why do you need mine? I asked. Because we have expenses, Loretta.
This house doesn't maintain itself. The mortgage is $1,200 a month. The utilities are another $300. Food is about $500, plus the internet, the phones, the car, the insurance. It all adds up.
There's nothing left over at the end of the month, Janice explained, with that victim tone she knew how to use so well. I give you $500 from my Social Security check every month, I said. 500 is nothing, Loretta. That barely covers your food, Janice said with contempt. Then let me go. Let me buy my apartment with my money and stop being a burden to you, I said. I saw Janice and Michael exchange a quick glance, a look I couldn't interpret at the time, but which I understood perfectly later. Mama, don't say that. Nobody wants you to leave. This is your home, Michael said, but his words sounded hollow, rehearsed. This is not my home, Michael. You said it yourself this morning. This is your home. I just live here, I said, feeling my voice finally break. Oh, for God's sake, don't start with the drama, Loretta. Nobody said that. Michael was just talking, Janice interrupted, rolling her eyes. Yes, he said it, and he's right. That's why I want to leave. I want my own place where I am the owner, where I pay my own bills, where no one makes me feel like I'm a burden, I said, and the tears finally started rolling down my cheeks. Mama, you can't live alone. You're 68 years old. What if you get sick? What if you fall? Who's going to take care of you? Michael asked, with that false concern that made me angrier than his insults. I'm 68, not 108. I'm perfectly healthy. I can take care of myself. I did it for 40 years before I came to live here, I replied, wiping my tears with the back of my hand. But it's different now, Mama. You're older now. You need to be with family, Michael insisted. What I need is respect and dignity, and I don't have that here, I said, getting up from the armchair. Look, Loretta, let's be honest, Janice started, crossing her arms. You have nowhere to go. You don't have any other family. Your friends are just as bad off or worse than you. You have no one. If you leave here, you're going to end up alone in a sad apartment, eating alone, watching TV alone, dying alone. Her words were like slaps, each one designed to destroy the little self-esteem I had left. The worst part was that she was right about one thing. I didn't have much family. My sister had died 5 years ago, my parents decades ago. My few friends were scattered, each with her own life, her own problems. I'd rather be alone and at peace than accompanied and miserable, I responded, surprised by my own bravery. Oh, how dramatic. Nobody's making you miserable, Loretta. We're giving you a roof, food, company, but of course nothing is ever enough for you, Janice said sarcastically. You don't give me anything. I pay with my Social Security, with my work in the house, with my dignity, I said, raising my voice for the first time. Your Social Security doesn't even cover half of what you cost here, and washing some dishes and sweeping a little bit is not work. Anyone can do that, Janice yelled, completely losing her composure. Then anyone can do it. Hire someone. I'm leaving, I said, and I walked toward my room. You're not going anywhere, Mama. Stop being ridiculous, Michael yelled after me. I locked myself in my room and listened as the two of them continued arguing outside. Janice blamed Michael for being too weak with me. Michael tried to calm her down. Both of them talked about me as if I were a problem to be solved, not a person. I stayed sitting on my bed for hours, listening as the house slowly returned to its usual silence. Janice had locked herself in her room, slamming the door. Michael tried knocking on my door twice more, but I didn't answer. I had nothing more to say to him at that moment. When night fell and the house was completely quiet, I pulled out my old phone and dialed the only number I knew would give me comfort. Ruth, my lifelong friend, the only person who truly knew me. Loretta, what's wrong, girl? It's almost 10 p.m., Ruth answered, her voice worried. And then I broke down. I told her everything, from the conversation I overheard that morning, to the fight with Janice, from the $2,000 they tried to spend, to the hurtful words about my age and my loneliness. Ruth listened without interrupting, letting me cry and vent like I hadn't in years. Loretta, listen to me closely. You're coming to my place tomorrow. You can stay with me for as long as you need while you look for your apartment. You can't stay there. That house is killing your soul. Ruth, I can't impose on you. You live in a small apartment. There's no room, I said through sobs. I have a pull-out sofa in the living room that's more comfortable than being in that house where they don't value you. Tomorrow, Loretta. Tomorrow, you pack what you need and you come here. That's not a suggestion. It's an order, Ruth said, with that firmness she always had when she knew I needed a push. That night, I barely slept. I lay looking at the ceiling of my small room, remembering how I had arrived at this place 20 years ago. Michael had just married Chanice and had told me they wanted to buy a bigger house, but they didn't have enough for the down payment. I sold my small 2-bedroom apartment, the one I had bought with so much effort, and I gave Michael the money, $50,000 that represented all my life's work up to that point. It's a loan, Mama. I'll pay you back in 2 years when I get my promotion, Michael had promised me, his eyes bright with excitement. But 2 years passed, then 5, then 10, and the loan was never mentioned again. When I brought it up, Michael would get annoyed. He would say that he was giving me a roof and food, and that was worth more than the $50,000. Now I understood that I had been a fool. I had blindly trusted my son, and he had abused that trust. Worse yet, I had allowed it for 20 years because I was afraid of being alone, afraid Michael would reject me, afraid of losing the only direct family I had left. But the fear of loneliness couldn't be stronger than my dignity. I couldn't keep living like that. When Friday dawned, I got up earlier than usual. I prepared breakfast, as always. I left everything ready on the table, but this time I didn't stay to serve them. I showered, dressed in my best clothes, and started packing my things into the 2 old suitcases I had stored at the back of the closet. I didn't have much: modest clothes, a few pairs of shoes, photographs, important documents, and the small wooden box where I kept the few pieces of jewelry I owned. My mother's wedding ring, some silver earrings my sister gave me, a thin chain I bought with my first paycheck. Everything fit into 2 suitcases. I heard Michael and Chanice get up. I heard their voices in the dining room, eating the breakfast I had prepared. Neither one knocked on my door to see how I was. Neither asked if I had slept well. It was as if I didn't exist unless they needed something. I waited for both of them to leave for work. Michael left first at 8:30 a.m. as usual. Chanice left at 9. When I heard her car engine fade away, I pulled my suitcases out of the room. I walked through the house for the last time, looking at every corner I had cleaned thousands of times. The kitchen, where I spent countless hours cooking for a family who barely said thank you. The living room, where I could never sit comfortably because it was Chanice's space. The dining room, where I always sat in the corner in the least comfortable chair. I left the house keys on the dining room table. Beside them, I left a note I had written during the night. Michael, I'm leaving. I can't keep living in a house where I'm only valued for my money. Thank you for these 20 years, but I need to reclaim my dignity. Don't look for me. When I have my new apartment, I'll send you the address. I love you, but I love myself more. Mama. I called a cab and waited outside with my 2 suitcases. Mr. Davis, the next-door neighbor, was watering his lawn and looked at me curiously. "Good morning, Miss Loretta. Going on a trip?" he asked kindly. "Something like that, Mr. Davis. Something like that," I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The cab arrived in 10 minutes. The driver, a young man in his 30s, helped me load the suitcases. "Where to, ma'am?" he asked. I gave him Ruth's address, and throughout the ride, I looked out the window, watching the streets of the city where I had lived all my life pass by. Every block moved me further away from Michael and Chanice, and strangely, instead of feeling sadness, I felt something close to relief. Ruth was waiting for me at the entrance of her building when I arrived. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, and that hug made me cry again. But this time, they weren't tears of pain, but of gratitude. "You're here now. You're safe now," Ruth whispered, stroking my hair as if I were a child. Her apartment was small, as she had said. a living room, dining room combo, one bedroom, a kitchen, and a bathroom. But it was clean, tidy, and above all, full of peace. There was no tension in the air, no looks of contempt, no hurtful words waiting to strike. The sofa bed is all yours. It's not much, but it's comfy, and this house is your house for as long as you need to stay. Ruth, I don't know how to thank you for this, I said, my voice choked. You don't have to thank me for anything. That's what friends are for. Besides, you'll keep me company. Since my husband passed 3 years ago, this house has been too quiet, Ruth said with a warm smile. We spent the rest of the morning organizing my things. Ruth gave me space in her closet, showed me where everything was in the kitchen, and made me feel welcome in 1,000 small ways. At 1 p.m., my phone started ringing. It was Michael. I didn't answer. He called again, and one more time. Finally, he left a voicemail. Mama, where are you? I came home for lunch and you're not here. I saw your note. Please call me. I'm worried. Worried? How interesting that he was worried now. He wasn't worried yesterday when he yelled at me. He wasn't worried when his wife tried to steal $2,000 from me. He wasn't worried for 20 years while I withered away in that house. Ruth looked at me with an unquestioning gaze. You gonna answer him? She asked. Not yet. I need to think clearly. First, I need to decide what I'm going to do with my life before I talk to him, I replied, turning off the phone. That afternoon, Ruth and I sat on her small balcony with a cup of coffee. From there, we could see the city, the buildings, life moving below on the streets. You know what hurts the most, Ruth? I said after a long silence. It's not the money they tried to spend. It's not even that they disrespected me. What hurts the most is that I lost 20 years of my life trying to earn my son's love. And now I realize that love was always conditioned on what I could give him. Ruth took my hand in hers, those hands also wrinkled by the years, but strong and warm. Loretta, listen to me closely. You didn't lose 20 years trying to earn his love. You gave 20 years of unconditional love, which is very different. The problem isn't you. The problem is that Michael and that woman didn't know how to value what they had, Ruth said with wisdom. But I'm his mother. Mothers are supposed to sacrifice for their children, I said, still feeling the guilt they had instilled in me all my life. Mothers should love their children, yes, but children must also love their mothers. Love isn't a one-way street, Loretta, and sacrifice has a limit. When the sacrifice is killing your soul, it's no longer love.
It's self-destruction, Ruth replied firmly. She was right. She always was. Ruth had been my friend since we both worked in the same textile factory 40 years ago. She knew me better than anyone. She had seen my marriage fail. She had watched me raise Michael alone. She had watched me slowly fade away in that house. Now, you need to think about yourself, about what you want, about what Loretta needs to be happy. Ruth continued, I want my apartment. I want a place of my own, where no one can make me feel like I'm in the way, where I can drink coffee in the morning without feeling like I'm using someone else's electricity, where I can watch TV without being told I'm hogging the couch, I said. And as I spoke, I felt something inside me grow stronger. Then, that's what we're going to get. We'll start looking for apartments tomorrow, Ruth said with determination. That night, I slept on Ruth's sofa bed, and it was the best night's sleep I'd had in years. There was no tension, no fear of hearing footsteps outside my door, no anxiety wondering what new form of humiliation awaited me the next day. On Saturday morning, my phone was still off, but I could imagine the number of missed calls I had. I didn't care. For the first time in 2 decades, I was my priority. Ruth and I had a quiet breakfast, talking about everything and nothing, laughing at old memories, making plans. Then we got dressed and went out. We had marked 5 apartments to see that day, all within my budget. The first was too dark, with small windows that barely let in light. The second was in a rundown building that smelled of dampness. The third was perfect, but it was on the 4th floor, with no elevator, and my knees weren't what they used to be. The fourth had plumbing problems the owner didn't want to fix.
But the fifth stole my heart the moment I walked in. It was a second-floor apartment in a well-maintained, secure, six-story building. It had a living room with a large bay window overlooking a small park, a perfectly equipped galley kitchen, a spacious bedroom with a closet, and a clean, functional bathroom. It wasn't large, about 650 square feet, but it was cozy, bright, and had a peaceful energy. "How much are you asking for it?" I asked the man showing it to us. $65,000. It includes the parking space downstairs and a small storage unit in the basement. The HOA fees are $100 a month, explained Mr. Benjamin, the apartment owner. $65,000? I could pay for it in cash and still have $65,000 left to live comfortably, for emergencies, for my later years. "Can I see it again?" I asked. Mr. Benjamin nodded kindly. I walked through every space, imagining my life there. My bed in the bedroom, my clothes in the closet, my few photographs on the walls. I imagined making coffee in that kitchen, sitting by that bay window to read, sleeping soundly. I saw my future within those empty walls, and that future was bright. "I'll take it. I want to buy it," I said with a firm voice. Mr. Benjamin smiled widely. "Excellent decision, ma'am. It's an apartment with great energy. The previous owner lived here for 20 years. She only moved to live with your daughter overseas. It's well cared for, never had any problems," he explained, pulling some papers from his portfolio. "We need to start the legal paperwork. Do you have a trusted attorney, or would you like me to recommend one?" "I know a good one," Ruth interjected. "My cousin's son is a closing attorney. He's honest and charges fair rates." "Perfect. Then we can meet Monday to start the paperwork. It usually takes about a week to complete the entire legal process," Mr. Benjamin said. 1 week. In 1 week, that apartment would be mine. My name would be on the deed. I would be a property owner, not a burden living for free in someone else's house. We left the apartment with the signed commitment and a $5,000 down payment, which I paid with a check. Ruth and I hugged in the street like two excited girls. "You did it, Loretta! You're going to have your own place," Ruth shouted, not caring who heard us. "I did it," I repeated, feeling a huge smile spread across my face. I really did it. We returned to Ruth's apartment euphoric, making decorating plans, talking about what furniture I would need to buy, what things I could get secondhand to save money. It was then, in the middle of that happiness, that I decided to turn on my phone. I had 32 missed calls from Michael, 17 from Janice, and over 40 text messages. The messages started worried. "Mama, where are you? Please answer, we are frantic." But then they changed tone. "Mama, this is ridiculous. Drop the drama. We need to talk about important things." And the last ones were directly threatening. "If you don't answer, I'm going to call the police. This is abuse to us. You're going to have to come back. You have nowhere to go." Ruth read the messages over my shoulder and snorted indignantly. "That boy is out of his mind. Abuse to them? As if they haven't abused you for years," Ruth said, shaking her head. "I have to talk to him, but by message. I don't want to hear his voice yet," I said. I sat on the sofa and wrote a long message, choosing every word carefully. "Michael, I'm fine. I'm in a safe place with a friend. I needed to leave that house to regain my mental health. For 20 years, I lived feeling like a burden, and yesterday's incident was the last straw. I bought an apartment of my own. I'm moving in a week. This isn't a punishment for you. It's an act of self-love for me. When I'm settled, I'll give you my address, and we can talk calmly. I love you, but I need to do this. Mama." I pressed send before I could change my mind. I saw the 2 checks indicating the message was delivered. Then I watched them turn blue, indicating he had read it. The 3 dots appeared, showing Michael was typing. They disappeared. They reappeared. They disappeared again.
Finally, his response arrived. "Mama, this is crazy. You can't just buy an apartment like that. Who's going to take care of you? Who will help you if you get sick? Have you thought about that? Plus, Chinese is really mad. She says you owe her an apology for the embarrassment at the mall. We need you to come home and talk this out like adults."
I read the message 3 times. No apology from him, no acknowledgement of what they had done, just more manipulation, more attempts to make me feel guilty, more fake concern disguised as love. "Are you going to answer him?" Ruth asked. "Yes," I said, and I wrote a short but clear response. "Michael, I am 68, not 98. I can take perfectly good care of myself, and I don't owe Chinese an apology. She tried to spend $2,000 of my money without my permission. If anyone should apologize, it's you two. We'll talk when I'm ready." After sending that message, I turned off the phone again. I didn't want to keep reading his attempts at manipulation. Ruth was right when she said I needed space to think clearly, and that was impossible with Michael bombarding me with messages designed to make me feel guilty. Sunday was a day of absolute peace. Ruth and I went to church in the morning, something I hadn't been able to do in years because Sundays were when Chinese organized her big family brunches, and I had to cook for everyone. Afterward, we walked through the market, looking at secondhand furniture and housewares. I found a small but beautiful dining table, solid wood, for only $80. The seller helped me load it into the cab. I also bought a set of pots in good condition for $30, some plates and glasses, and towels for the bathroom. Ruth insisted on buying me a set of new sheets she saw at a store. "So you can start your new life with new sheets, clean, with no history," Ruth said as she paid. I couldn't help but cry again, but this time from emotion. We stored everything in Ruth's building storage unit, waiting for the day I could move into my new apartment. Everything I bought, every item I set aside for my new life, was another step toward my freedom. On Monday morning, I met with the closing attorney, Marcus, Ruth's cousin's son. He was a man in his mid-40s, serious but kind. He reviewed all my documents, verified the legal status of the apartment, and explained every step of the process. "Miss Mathis, everything is in order. The apartment has no debt, no liens. Mr. Benjamin is the sole legal owner. We can close the sale next Friday. Are you sure you want to pay in cash? We could arrange a mortgage if you prefer not to use up so much of your savings." Marcus explained, "I want to pay in cash. I want it to be completely mine, no debts, no mortgage. I've waited my whole life for this moment," I said with conviction. "I understand. Then Friday at 10 a.m., we'll meet here in my office to sign the deed. You need to bring the payment for $60,000 plus $5,000 for notary fees and taxes. The $5,000 advance you already paid will be deducted from the total," Marcus explained, showing me all the papers. $65,000, less than half of my savings. I could do it, and I would. I left the attorney's office feeling stronger than ever. I walked through the city, observing everything with new eyes. The stores, the parks, the buildings, everything looked different when you knew you were building your own life, and not just surviving someone else's. When I returned to Ruth's apartment, I briefly turned on my phone to check messages. Michael had only sent one more, and the tone had completely changed. "Mama, I talked to Chinese. She is willing to apologize if you apologize too. We can forget this whole misunderstanding if you come home today. We miss you. The house isn't the same without you. Please think about it carefully before you make a mistake you can't reverse." A mistake I can't reverse? As if buying my own home were a mistake. As if reclaiming my dignity were something to regret? As if 20 years of feeling invisible weren't the real mistake? I didn't answer him. I had nothing more to say to him for the moment. The following days passed in a mix of nerves and excitement. Ruth and I continued buying things for my apartment. A small but comfortable sofa we found at a garage sale for $10, a used but excellent condition full-sized bed for $200, a thin bookcase, some lamps, simple curtains. I also went to the bank to organize everything for the payment. The teller, a young woman named Aisha, served me with great patience as I withdrew the $60,000 using a cashier's check. "Ma'am, this is a considerable amount. Are you sure this is a legitimate transaction? We don't want you to be a victim of any fraud," Aisha told me with genuine concern. It's not a fraud, dear. I'm buying my first apartment of my own at 68 years old, I replied proudly. Aisha smiled widely. That's beautiful, ma'am. Congratulations. My grandmother also bought her house at 70 after divorcing my grandfather, she told me. She told me those were the best years of her life, Aisha shared as she processed the check. Her words gave me hope. It wasn't too late. It was never too late to start over. On Thursday night, the day before signing the deed, Michael showed up at Ruth's building. I don't know how he got the address. He probably checked with someone he knew or followed some clue on my social media. He rang the intercom insistently until Ruth answered. "Who is it?" Ruth asked curtly. "It's Michael, Loretta's son. I need to speak to my mama," I heard his voice through the small speaker. Ruth looked at me, asking with her eyes what I wanted to do. I took a deep breath. "Let him up, but you stay here with me," I said. Ruth nodded. Minutes later, Michael was knocking on the apartment door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see him looking so worn out. He had deep circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair disheveled. He didn't look like the successful engineer he boasted about being.
"Mama," he said, and his voice cracked slightly. "Michael," I replied, without moving from the doorway, without inviting him in. "Can we talk?" he asked, glancing into the apartment where Ruth stood with her arms crossed like a guardian. "It's fine right here," I said. Michael sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Mama, this got out of hand. I know Chanice and I messed up. We shouldn't have taken your card without permission. But you didn't have to just leave like that without a word, leaving us worried." Michael began with that tone he used when he wanted to sound reasonable but was really just trying to manipulate. "Michael, I left you a note explaining exactly why I was leaving. It wasn't impulsive. It was necessary," I replied, keeping my calm. "But Mama, we're family. Families forgive. Families resolve their problems together, not by running away," Michael said, taking a step closer. "Families also respect each other, Michael, and you haven't respected me in years. It's just that I was so used to the mistreatment that I stopped noticing it," I said, feeling the words come out with more force than I expected. "Mistreatment? Mama, we never mistreated you. We gave you a roof, food, everything you needed," Michael protested, raising his voice. "You gave me a room the size of a closet. You made me feel like every bite of food I ate was a favor. You treated me like a servant, not a mother. And when I saved money with 40 years of work, you tried to steal it," I said, and every word was like releasing a weight I had carried for too long. "We weren't going to steal anything. It was just for some things for the house where you live too. It's not stealing, Mama. It's family sharing," Michael yelled, losing his composure. $2,000 is not sharing, Michael. It's stealing, and I never authorized that expense," I replied without raising my voice, which seemed to frustrate him even more. "Fine, all right. I admit it was too much. Chanice got carried away seeing all those things on sale. But we can fix this. Come home, and I promise you none of this will ever happen again," Michael said, changing tactics, his tone now pleading. "I'm not coming back, Michael. Tomorrow, I sign the deed for my new apartment. I'm moving in this weekend. I've already made my decision," I said, and I saw his face go from pleading to shock. "You bought an apartment without consulting me? Mama, that's crazy. What if you got scammed? What if it's a bad deal? I should have reviewed those things with you," Michael said, almost panicking. "I have an attorney, a lawyer. Everything is legal and verified. I didn't need your permission, Michael. I'm a 68-year-old adult with full mental capacity. I can make my own decisions," I explained patiently. Michael fell silent for a moment, processing what I had just told him. I watched his eyes move quickly, calculating, thinking about his next move. "And the money? How much do you have left after buying that apartment?" he asked. And there was the real reason for his visit. He didn't come from me. He came for my money. "That is none of your business, Michael," I replied firmly. "Of course it's my business.
I'm your son, your only family. I have a right to know how you're managing your finances. At your age, you could make errors in judgment, Michael said with that condescending tone that always bothered me so much. At my age, I have more experience and wisdom than you. I've managed my money for 40 years without making mistakes. I'm not going to start now, I said, crossing my arms. Mama, let's be honest. That money is partially mine too. I've supported you for 20 years. I've given you a house, food, utilities. That has value. If we calculate it, I probably owe you little or nothing, Michael said, and his words felt like a bucket of ice water dumped over me. Ruth took a step forward from inside the apartment. Young man, I think it's time for you to leave. You heard your mother. She made her decision, and you have no right to her money, Ruth intervened firmly. You stay out of this, ma'am. This is between my mama and me, Michael replied rudely. This is my house, and I can get involved whenever I please. And I'm going to ask you to leave right now, or I'll call security, Ruth said, pulling out her phone. Michael looked at me with a mix of anger and desperation. Is this what you want, Mama? To break up our family? To let strangers get between us? He asked, pointing at Ruth. Ruth is not a stranger. She's been my friend for 40 years. She's been by my side at times when you didn't even exist. And no, Michael, I'm not breaking up the family. The family broke up when you stopped seeing me as your mother and started seeing me as your ATM, I said, feeling the tears threaten to spill, but I held them back. I can't believe you're doing this. Janice was right about you, she said. She said you were selfish, that you only thought about yourself, and I defended you. How foolish I was, Michael said, venom in every word. Those words hurt more than I cared to admit, but they also confirmed what I already knew. Janice had poisoned my son against me for years, and he had let her. If that's what you think of me, then it's better for me to leave your life. I don't want to be a burden to anyone, I said, my voice trembling. Fine, great. Go to your apartment, live alone, but don't come running when you get sick or need help. Don't come back when you realize you made a mistake, Michael said, turning to leave. Michael, I called out, and he stopped without turning around. I love you. I will always love you. You are my son, but I can no longer live by sacrificing my dignity for your comfort. I hope you understand that. Michael didn't respond. He simply kept walking toward the elevator. I watched him get in, watched him press the button, watched him disappear behind the closing doors. And with those doors, a chapter of my life also closed.
Ruth hugged me while I finally allowed myself to cry. I cried for the 20 lost years, for the broken relationship with my son, for the family that could have been but never was. But I also cried with relief because I knew I had made the right decision even though it hurt. That night, I barely slept. I tossed and turned on the sofa bed, replaying the conversation with Michael, questioning if I had been too harsh, wondering if I should have given him another chance. But every time I thought about going back, I remembered the 20 years of small and large humiliations. I remembered the attempted theft. I remembered all the times they made me feel invisible. No, I couldn't go back. For the first time in my life, I had to choose myself. Friday dawned sunny and beautiful, as if the universe were celebrating with me. Ruth and I dressed in our best clothes. She insisted on accompanying me to the attorney's office. This is one of the most important days of your life, Loretta. You're not going through it alone, Ruth said, putting on her cream silk blouse, the one she saved for special occasions. We arrived at the attorney's office 15 minutes before the agreed time. Mr. Benjamin was already there, along with Marcus, the attorney. Both greeted us with smiles. Good morning, Miss Mathis. Ready to be a homeowner? Marcus asked warmly. More than ready, I replied with a huge smile. The process lasted nearly 2 hours. I had to sign so many papers I lost count. Deeds, certificates, declarations, receipts. Marcus patiently explained each document, making sure I understood exactly what I was signing.
When it was time to hand over the $60,000 cashier's check, my hand trembled slightly. It was nearly everything I had, but I looked at Ruth, who smiled at me proudly, and I remembered why I was doing this. I placed the check on the table. Mr. Benjamin reviewed it, nodded with satisfaction, and Marcus officially processed it. Very well, Miss Mathis. With this, we complete the transaction. This apartment is now legally yours. Here are the deeds with your name, the keys, and the building documents. Congratulations on your new home, Marcus said, handing me a thick envelope with all the papers and a keychain with 3 keys. I took the keys in my hand and held them as if they were the most valuable treasure in the world. And to me, they were. These keys represented freedom, dignity, and independence. They represented the end of a dark chapter and a beginning of something new. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. You don't know what this means to me, I said, my voice cracking with emotion. Believe me, I do, Miss Mathis. I've seen many transactions in my life, but few with such an emotional load as this one. I hope you are very happy in your new home, Marcus said sincerely. We left the attorney's office and Ruth practically screamed with excitement in the street. You did it! You own your own place! At 68 years old, you took back your life! Ruth shouted as she hugged me, and we spun around on the sidewalk like 2 crazy girls. People passing by looked at us curiously. Some smiled, seeing our joy. An older lady stopped and asked us what we were celebrating. I just bought my first apartment, I told her proudly. Oh, how lovely! Congratulations, honey. It's never too late to fulfill dreams, the lady said with a warm smile before continuing on her way. Ruth and I went straight to the apartment. I wanted to see it again, now that it was officially mine. I opened the door with trembling hands, put the key in the lock, turned, and pushed. The apartment was exactly as I remembered it, empty, smelling clean, full of light coming through the bay window. But now it looked different. Now it wasn't just a pretty space. It was my space, my home. I walked slowly through every corner, touching the walls, imagining where I would put each piece of furniture, visualizing my life there. The table by the bay window where I would drink coffee every morning, the sofa in front of the TV where I would rest without fear of someone telling me I was in the way, the bed in my bedroom where I would sleep in peace. It's perfect, Loretta. It's absolutely perfect, Ruth said with tears in her eyes. Yes, it is, I replied, also crying, but this time tears of pure joy. We spent the rest of the day cleaning the apartment from top to bottom. Even though it was already quite clean, I wanted to leave it spotless before bringing my things in. Ruth brought cleaning supplies, rags, and brooms, and we worked together like in the old days, when we were young and cleaned other people's houses. On Saturday morning, Ruth organized a small help squad. She called her niece Kendra, a strong woman in her 30s who worked for a moving company. Kendra arrived with her truck and 2 friends who helped us move all the furniture we had bought during the week. It was beautiful to see my empty apartment filling up with life. The dining table fit perfectly by the bay window. The sofa fit exactly in the living room. The bed looked majestic in my bedroom with the new sheets Ruth had gifted me. Every item in its place, every space designed for my comfort. Kendra and her friends were incredibly kind. They refused to charge me the full moving fee. Miss Loretta, any friend of my Aunt Ruth is a friend of ours. Just pay us for the gas and we're good, Kendra said with a genuine smile. I gave her $100 despite her protests. It was the least I could do for their help and kindness. By noon, the apartment was completely settled. It wasn't luxurious or modern, but it was cozy and functional. The curtains we bought added a warm touch. The few photographs I had, now framed and hung on the walls, gave it personality. My plants on the small balcony gave it life. Ruth insisted on staying to help me organize the kitchen. We put away the pots, the plates, the glasses, the cutlery. Every cabinet had its purpose. Every space was optimized. Tomorrow, we'll go to the market and buy groceries to fill your refrigerator, Ruth said, as she wiped down the shelves before putting away the dishes. Ruth, you've done too much for me. I don't know how I'll ever repay you for all of this, I said, feeling overwhelmed by her generosity. You won't repay me for anything. Friends don't pay each other back, they support each other. Besides, you would do the same for me, Ruth replied, hugging me. She was right. I would, but that didn't make me feel any less grateful. That night, my first night in my own apartment, Ruth went home after ensuring 1,000 times that I would be all right alone. I stood in the middle of my living room, looking around, still unable to believe that all of this was mine. I made myself a cup of tea in my kitchen, using my teapot, my mug, my water. I sat in my armchair in front of my window and looked outside. The park was lit by faint streetlights. Some people were walking dogs, others were simply enjoying the cool night. For the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel anxious. There was no tension in the air. There was no fear of hearing footsteps approaching with complaints or demands. There was only peace, silence, freedom. I allowed myself to cry again, but these tears were different. They weren't tears of pain or anger. They were tears of relief, gratitude, and hope. I had made it out. I had managed to save myself. Sunday was the calmest day I'd had in years. I woke up without an alarm, letting my body rest as long as it needed. It was 9 a.m. when I finally opened my eyes, and the first thing I saw was the ceiling of my own bedroom, in my own house. I got up slowly, without haste. I made coffee in my kitchen using the coffee maker I found at a garage sale. The aroma filled the entire apartment and made me smile. I took my cup to the bay window and sat there for an hour, just watching, thinking, feeling. Ruth arrived at noon as she had promised, bringing a huge pot of chicken soup she had made that morning. "So you have food for the whole week, and I brought fresh bread from the bakery too," Ruth said, coming in with her bags full. We had lunch together at my new table, chatting about everything and nothing. She told me about her family, about her plans to visit her daughter next month, about the new show she was watching on TV. Simple, everyday conversations, beautiful in their normalcy. "Have you heard anything from Michael?" Ruth asked, cautiously, as we washed the dishes. "No, and I don't expect to. He made it very clear that he thought I was selfish for making this decision. He probably needs time to process it, or maybe he'll never understand. Either way, I can't do anything about it anymore," I replied, drying a plate. "Does it hurt?" Ruth asked, looking directly at me. "A lot. He's my son. It will always hurt. But the pain of losing him is less than the pain of losing myself," I said with honesty. Ruth nodded in understanding and said nothing more on the subject. There was nothing more to say. The following days were about adapting. I learned the routines of my building, met some neighbors, and discovered the nearby shops. There was a market 2 blocks away that sold fresh fruits and vegetables, a bakery 3 blocks away that made the most delicious bread I had ever tasted, and a drugstore on the corner run by a kind lady named Miss Evelyn. I built a simple but satisfying routine. I woke up early, made coffee, had breakfast looking out at the park, then did household chores at my own pace, without pressure. In the afternoons, I read or watched TV, shows I chose without having to negotiate with anyone. In the evenings, I cooked for myself, small portions of meals that I enjoyed. 1 week after moving, I received another message from Michael. This time it was different. "Mama, I know we haven't talked in months. I know things ended badly. I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened. Chanice and I are having problems. She wants things I can't give her. She's always dissatisfied, always wants more. And I realized something. That's how she treated you too. Like what you gave was never enough. I think I understand now why you left. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I get it." I read the message several times. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, wanted to run to hug him, wanted to rebuild everything. But another part, the part that had learned to protect me, urged caution. I showed the message to Ruth during our Wednesday lunch. "What are you going to do?" Ruth asked. "I'm going to respond, but with clear boundaries. He's my son and I love him, but I can no longer be the mother who sacrifices everything for him. If he wants a relationship with me, it has to be on my terms," I said with a firmness that surprised even myself. I wrote a careful response. "Michael, I appreciate your message and your honesty. Understanding what happened is the first step. If you want to rebuild our relationship, you are welcome, but it has to be different. I am no longer the mama who lets herself be manipulated or mistreated. I have my own life now, my own space, my own boundaries. If you can respect that, we can start over. I love you, but I love myself now. His answer came the next day. I understand, Mama. Could I visit you sometime? Just to see how you are, what your new apartment is like, without Chanice? Just me. We agreed he would come the following Sunday. I spent the entire week nervously cleaning the apartment obsessively, even though it was already clean, cooking and re-cooking in my mind what I would say to him. Sunday arrived promptly at 3 p.m. When I opened the door, I saw a different Michael. Thinner, with more gray hair, tired eyes, but also softer. "Hi, Mama," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Hello, son," I replied, and we hugged in the doorway. It was a long, healing hug, full of unsaid things. I showed him the apartment. He walked through every space carefully, touching the furniture, looking at the photographs on the walls, observing everything. "It's beautiful, Mama. It's small, but cozy. It feels like you," Michael said sincerely. We sat at my table by the bay window. I served him coffee and cookies I had bought that morning. We talked for hours. Michael told me about his problems with Chanice, about how she constantly pressured him for more money, more things, more status. He told me he had started therapy to understand his own behavioral patterns. The therapist made me see that I repeated with Chanice the same thing Dad did to you. I let her treat you badly because I wanted to keep the peace in my marriage without realizing I was sacrificing my relationship with you, Michael admitted with tears in his eyes. "Michael, your father and you are two different people. Your father abandoned us. You stayed, albeit in a distorted way. The fact that you recognize this now means you can change," I said, taking his hand across the table. "Can you ever forgive me?" Michael asked, looking directly at me. "I already forgave you, son. The forgiveness isn't for you. It's for me to free myself from resentment. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or going back to how things were. It means moving forward with healthier boundaries," I explained calmly. Michael nodded, understanding. "Does Chanice know you're here?" I asked. "Yeah, she didn't like it, but I no longer give her the power to decide over my relationships. That's another change I'm making," Michael replied with determination. Our relationship after that day was slow, but genuine in its rebuilding. Michael started visiting me every 2 weeks, always alone, always respectful of my space and my time. He asked me about my life, about my activities, about my friends. He truly listened, not just waiting for his turn to speak. 6 months later, Michael and Chanice divorced. It didn't surprise me. Some relationships are built on toxic foundations that eventually collapse. Michael moved into a small apartment similar to mine and began his own journey of self-discovery. Today, 1 year after moving into my apartment, I am sitting in my armchair by the bay window watching the sunset over the park. I have $75,000 in the bank, untouched. My apartment is paid for completely. My $500 monthly Social Security check covers my basic expenses. I live modestly, but with dignity. Michael comes to visit me every 15 days. Our relationship isn't perfect. It probably never will be, but it is honest. He is learning to be a better son, and I am learning to be a mother with healthy boundaries. Ruth continues to be my rock, my best friend, my chosen family. The women in my knitting class have become my social circle. I have plans to take a small trip next year, something I never allowed myself to do. My life is not extraordinary. I have no luxuries or spectacular adventures, but I have something I didn't have for 20 years, peace. I have my own space where no one makes me feel like I'm surplus. I have my own money that no one tries to steal. I have my own life that no one controls. Sometimes I look back and wonder what would have happened if I had found the courage to leave sooner. But then I remember that every experience, even the painful ones, brought me here, to this moment, to this peace. I am 69 years old now. I don't know how many years I have left, but I know that every day I live in this apartment, in my own space, with my dignity intact, is a day earned, a day lived for me. And that, after a lifetime of living for others, is more valuable than any amount of money in the bank. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.